Shannon from Betfully here, breaking down one of the most important factors, whether you're playing daily fantasy or placing bets in baseball. I'm talking about MLB's park factors. There's so much to consider when you're talking about where teams are playing, whether it's the atmosphere, the weather, or just the dimensions of a ballpark. These things can significantly impact the outcome of a game, so it's important you know as much as possible before placing your bets. And today we're breaking down all 30 ballparks. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about each and every one and how they play and how they could impact every game. So here we go. The most hitter-friendly ballpark in the country is Coors Field, which has a 30% increase in run production compared to the average ballpark, and also has a 20% bump in home run chances. And it's not because of the dimensions of the ballpark, it's because of something you may have heard of called the Coors Field effect, which basically has something to do with the atmosphere. So Coors Field is located approximately 1 mile above sea level. That means lower atmospheric pressure and less air density, which in turn means less drag, more distance for those baseballs, making Coors Field, of course, the cream of the crop for offensive production. Also, home run chances for righties has increased 13% over the last 3 years. So when you're thinking about Coors Field, you definitely want to stream those hitters. Maybe think twice about those pitchers. And the second most hitter-friendly ballpark in the country is Fenway Park. It might be surprising considering there's a 37-foot wall in left field known as the Green Monster that basically just gobbles up potential home runs. Consider this. Here you get a 17% boost in run production. However, Fenway does suppress those home runs for righties by 5% over the last 3 years. It is actually the best park in the country for doubles. That makes sense when you think about potential home runs that hit off the Green Monster and then turn into doubles. It's also great for lefties. It actually ranks number 1 ahead of Coors Field. And the third most hitter-friendly venue in the country is the Great American Ballpark, or as some refer to it, the Great American Small Park. Basically, this is the mecca of MASH. A situation where home runs are hit 30% more here than anywhere else, 16% run amplifying. So why is this? Well, it's because of the short porches, 328 in left, 325 in right. And while the left field wall is elevated 12 feet, not the case on the right, where lefties like Joey Votto have been doing damage for years. And the next most hitter-friendly ballpark, according to MLB's Park Factor score, is Oriole Park at Camden Yards. However, while this used to be considered very hitter-friendly, that might not be the case anymore. So a huge asterisk here. Why? Because the Orioles drastically changed the left field dimensions and wall size this offseason, pushing the fence back by as much as 30 feet. They raised the wall height from 7 feet to 12 feet. Left field fences went from third shallowest to the very deepest. It will most definitely go from hitter friendly to probably playing pretty neutral. Another thing to note, it does project to be about a 25% decrease in home runs for righties. Next up is Nationals Park. It actually didn't used to be such a hitter-friendly park, but it's become that way over the years. Last year, it actually got a Park Factor score of 104, with 100 being the neutral score there. So it is quite hitter-friendly. Next up is Truist Park, previously known as SunTrust Park. And this was a newer ballpark, so we don't have as much data on this particular ballpark, but it is kind of playing neutral, kind of trending towards hitter friendly. It is slightly better for lefty power. Keep in mind that this is one of the warmer stadiums, which is great for hitters. Hey, they don't call it Hotlanta for nothing. One thing to consider always is the weather and the temperature specifically, because 30 degrees of temperature can account for 1.3 runs. Next up is Citizens Bank Park in the city of brotherly love, home to the Phillies. It actually came in as the same score as Truist Park at 103. It ranked 7th last year in home runs. It's definitely one of the more hitter-friendly places in the National League. Angels Stadium at Anaheim is next on our list. And hey, do not sleep on Angel Stadium. It had a Park Factor score of 102 last year. Since Angel Stadium lowered its right field wall 10 feet in 2018, it's been the most favorable home run park for left-handed batters. A great thing to keep in mind when you're placing those bets. Next up is Kauffman Stadium, home of the Royals. And this is an interesting one because in terms of run production, it's great. It's top 10. But in terms of home runs, forget about it. They're second to last in home run production. But hey guys, don't take my word for it. Just look back at the 2012 home run derby. Robinson Cano could not hit a single home run at Kauffman Stadium, and it turned out to be a pretty disastrous home run derby. Chase Field is up next, and it is considered pretty hitter friendly. In fact, top 10 in run production. Although it is very much a home run suppressing venue, ranks 21st in that category. Another thing to consider with this one is the roof open or closed, because it does play more hitter friendly with the roof open due to warmer temperature. That's another important factor to consider, whether in a dome the roof is open or closed. When it's open, it tends to be a little more hitter friendly because the temperature tends to rise. At number 11, it is Progressive Field, home of the Guardians. In terms of runs, it is top 10, pretty neutral to home runs though. One thing to note here is due to it being an open air park next to Lake Erie, sometimes the balls that are hit into the air are basically at the mercy of whatever winds are blowing off the lake. So be sure to check the wind conditions before you play anybody in this ballpark. Next up, Minute Maid Park, home of the Astros. And that score comes in around 100, so it's relatively neutral. Although at 107 for home runs, it does tend to lean a bit more hitter friendly. Next up, it's Guaranteed Rate Field in the South Side with a park score of 100, which makes it relatively neutral. However, very favorable to home runs. In fact, it ranks 4th ahead of Coors Field in the home run park factor score. And whereas some ballparks lean more lefties or righties in terms of helping out one side of the plate or the other, this one actually helps both sides of the plate pretty evenly. At number 14 now, so we're getting to that neutral zone, we're going Dodger Stadium, which has kind of been considered more of a pitcher-friendly park. It does come in with about a 100 score here. Has decreased run scoring by 7% over the last 3 years, but also happens to be pretty homer friendly as well. No park has come close when it comes to boasting home runs for right-handed bats over the last 3 seasons. Dodger Stadium has actually increased them by 44%. So what was generally considered more of a pitcher's park, maybe a little bit more neutral than we thought. Next up, it's American Family Field, previously known as Miller Park, home of the Brewers. Its park factor score is 99, making it extremely neutral. And consider this little case study. When Willy Adames got traded from the Rays, where he played for several years in the very pitcher-friendly Tropicana Field, when he got traded to the Brewers, his slugging percentage actually increased by 150 points. Next up is PNC Park, which most associated with it being slightly pitcher-friendly, but it is kind of neutral. Park factor score of 99, 14th in runs, 27th in home runs. Very much a neutral site with home run depressing qualities. Next up is the Rogers Center, home of the Toronto Blue Jays. It may seem hitter friendly just because of who they have on their team right now in 2022, but it is actually pretty neutral. It is great though for lefty power, and the fact that it's played in a dome kind of contributes to that quality. And next up, we have Globe Life Field in Arlington, home of the Texas Rangers. That's not to be confused with Globe Life Park, which the team actually left back in 2019. And Globe Life Field plays nothing like its predecessor. We don't have a lot of data to go off of, but back in 2020, it actually suppressed home runs. Another thing to note is the roof there has a significant impact. So if the roof is open, like I mentioned earlier, that tends to raise the temperature, which tends to make it more hitter friendly. Next up is Wrigley Field, home of the Cubs, and this one comes in with a park factor score of 98, which makes it kind of neutral, maybe leaning a little bit pitcher friendly. Wrigley, though, is very dependent on the weather, so that's an important thing that you need to check. Basically, winds coming in off Lake Michigan can make or break a pitcher's day. The weather is kind of unpredictable, but in the summer it gets very warm, which makes it very much a home run haven. Next up is Comerica Park, home of the Detroit Tigers, and this is a place that is not conducive to home runs. There's a big fence in center fields, but it actually makes it better for triples since there's so much space out there. In fact, Tigers home field allows 42% more triples than average. Next up is Citi Field in Queens, home of the Mets. This one kind of neutral, kind of pitcher friendly. It also has been playing more pitcher friendly because the data is a bit skewed because they've had such excellent pitchers over the years. Overall park factor of 98, but home run factor of 103. So kind of evens itself out there. Next up is Target Field, home of the Minnesota Twins. They have a park factor score of 98, but it is pretty pitcher friendly for the most part. They do have a home run score that ranks in the bottom third. Next up is Yankee Stadium, the house that George built in the Bronx. And even though Chris Woodward, the Texas Rangers manager, called Yankee Stadium basically a little league park, it actually plays pretty neutral according to the data from 2019 to 2021. The exception, though, being that short porch, which is very much a home run haven for lefties. Yankee Stadium park factor score for home runs for lefties is in the top 10. This season, maybe it seems like Yankee Stadium is very hitter friendly because it actually does rank second in home runs behind Miller Park, just ahead of Coors Field. Next up is Marlins Park in Miami. This one is definitely a home run suppressing venue due to very daunting dimensions out in the outfield. So basically, Miami calls for streaming those pitchers, but maybe downgrading those hitters. Next up is Tropicana Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays, and very much a pitcher's haven. Run suppressing score of 90, home run suppressing score of 84. So just not good for hitters, specifically brutal for right-handed hitters whose home run and hits ranks in the bottom 5 of all the venues. You'll notice the Rays offense always does a lot better away from home because of this park factor. Next up is Oriole Park, one of the most home run suppressing venues in the country, and this has a lot to do with the weather and the wind. San Fran plays in the coldest average temperature and actually allows 25% fewer home runs. It's actually pretty short to the right field corner, 309 feet, but it's actually offset by a 24-foot wall that hitters struggle with, unless you're Barry Bonds. And that right center power alley stretches 421 feet. Great for extra bases, terrible for home runs. Winds are definitely a factor at Oriole Park. They blow in off the bay and they tend to keep the ball in the park. Next up is Petco Park, which very much is a pitcher-friendly park. It's gotten that reputation over the years. Here's why. There's something called a marine layer because of where the stadium is located in San Diego. It's very close to the ocean. So there's very much a dampening effect when it comes to those home runs. It also has to do with the dense winds that come in off the ocean. Is Oakland Coliseum, home of the A's, very much a pitcher-friendly venue. This has a little bit to do with the foul territory. It has the most expansive foul territory in all of baseball that tends to limit the offense. And a lot of times when you look at some of the players from the Oakland A's who've been traded, you'll see a huge boost in some of their numbers, which just goes to show you how pitcher-friendly this ballpark really is. Players like Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, now got a little bit of a boost now that they're not playing in Oakland Coliseum. And at 29, the second most pitcher-friendly park in the country is Busch Stadium, home of the Cardinals. This is by far one of the worst for hitters. 10% or greater home run reduction, one of the worst parks by far. St. Louis is alone in last place for batting average on contact, 7% below average. So why is it one of the worst places for hitters? Well, it's actually a bit of a mystery. In fact, there's really nothing notable about the weather or the climate or the wall distances. The Cardinals have been stellar on defense, though, the past few years, entering the 2022 season with 190 defensive runs saved since 2019. That's the best in baseball, so perhaps that contributes to it as well. And lastly, the most pitcher-friendly park in the country is T-Mobile Park, previously Safeco Field and home of the Seattle Mariners. Now, this is actually a pretty small ballpark, but it has a lot to do with the weather conditions. Chilly temperatures, lack of elevation basically sap the power out of the bat. So combine that with the sea level status and the ball travels about 5% less. So that's all our ballparks across the country, all of the park factors that you need to know before placing your bets. For more information, analytics, visit our website, LineStarApp.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and download the LineStar app for more information before you place your bets. Be sure to comment below if you have any questions on the park factors. We'll see you next time.